So like always, appreciate you guys coming out, cover Penn State football. Appreciate it, really do. Kind of get into last game, some of the things that we usually talk about. We lost the turnover battle, we won explosive play, we won the third down battle, we won the sack battle, we won the drive start battle, and we won the penalty battle. So all those things were positive. We've done a great job all year long with the turnover battle. We got to make sure that we buckle down on that and continue, because that's been a huge part of our identity and a huge part of our success. When you talk about the players of the game, on offense we had Tyler Warren, on defense we had Adisa Isaac, and on special teams obviously Daquan Hardy. And then the D squad players of the week was Matt Dedish, Tyler Holsworth, Kavion Keys, Colin Dinkins, and then Dakari Nelson on special teams. So awesome for those guys. Our D squad has done a great job all year long of getting us prepared. The practices have been fun. They really have. How our guys are competing, not only the good on good periods, but really the D squad periods as well. Some positives of the game, obviously, we won, but most importantly, we got better. I thought we got better during the week at practice, and I thought we got better on Saturday. I think you guys know Nelly, Dr. Josh Nelson, who works with us, does a great job. That was kind of his message at breakfast, either breakfast or pregame meal, I can't remember. He said there's a lot of ways that you can kind of look at it. We talk about our process of getting better each week and each practice, and you can kind of look at Saturday is a culmination of the work you do throughout the week, or you can just look at Saturday as another day to get better, just like the practice days. I thought that was a really good message for our team, and I thought we did that. I think we're playing really good complementary football, offense, defense, and special teams. I think that's been really important for us. One of the things that Manny was talking about the other day, which I thought was a great point and something we take a lot of pride in. I think we're one of the top teams in the country of not allowing opportunities into the red zone. People aren't getting to the red zone. It's funny because some of our red zone stats aren't good from early in the season. Well, there hadn't been a whole lot of opportunities to improve on them because we're not letting people down there, which I'm totally fine with that. But I also think that's a team stat. That's a team stat that our defense is getting a ton of 3 and outs, and our offense is either scoring or able to get a couple first downs before we punt people deep and make them drive the whole field. So, as a head coach, I'm always kind of looking at what are the team stats. Just like I remember coming up in the profession, a lot of people used to talk about time of possession being an important stat. Well, I think Saturday's a perfect example of that. If you get turnovers and return punts for touchdowns, your time of possession's not going to be very good. Your defense can go right back on the field when you return 2 punts for touchdowns. So that's where I think a lot of people have gotten away from that stat. Some other things, obviously we were explosive on special teams. Daquan Hardy's 2 punt returns, that was a school record and tied a season record, which is awesome. I thought we played very physical on both fronts. We talked about all week last week, we talked about their identity being the most explosive offense that we had seen this year. We took that identity away from them. Whenever you're able to do that to a team, you got a chance. You really do. And then we played 76 players in the game, which continues to be a trend this year. And it's something I think has been really helpful for us. Areas for improvement, we got to start fast on offense. Our 2s and 3s, when they get opportunities to go in the game, got to play at a higher level. Ball security and then perimeter blocking. Getting into Ohio State specifically, Ryan Day, obviously a ton of respect for Ryan and Ohio State as a whole. When you look at kind of who they are, offensively, Brian Hartline, one of the most respected wide receiver coaches in the country and recruiter. This year has become the offensive coordinator. Obviously, I think Ryan's still heavily involved in what they're doing, but they're continuing to do a really good job. They're still a spread offense. They will go tempo. as well, but I wouldn't necessarily say that's all they do. A lot of times they're trying to get a look at the defense. You talk about personnel, obviously it starts with Marvin Harrison. We're very familiar with him. Everybody in the country is very familiar with him. Tremendous player. Travion Henderson, the running back. Cade Stover is probably the guy that I don't think is getting enough attention and enough love. He's been a very productive player for him, has elite ball skills. Emeka Ibuku, another guy that we got a ton of respect for. And then Mylan Williams, the running back. Some guys we left out based on we're not sure whether they're going to play or not, but a ton of guys that we got respect for. Defensively, Jim Knowles, who again we're very familiar with and has done a really nice job last year, did a nice job, and then obviously this year is taking it to a whole nother level. They're a 4-2-5 scheme. You're seeing a little bit more of the 3 safety look this year that they ran that he ran when he was at Oklahoma State. I think they're doing a little bit less than maybe they did the year before, but what they do really well, and obviously I think that is equated to them doing a really good job of limiting explosive plays. The guy that I got like a coach crush on is number 35, Tommy Eichenberg. Is just a really good football player. He's fun to watch. Physically, he can make the plays. He's obviously the quarterback of the defense. Everything kind of goes through him. You pick up a lot of stuff off tape watching him, as well as TV copies. Just a really smart, instinctive, athletic linebacker who we have a ton of respect for. Number 8, their safety, Lathan Ransom, another guy we've got a ton of respect for. Their defensive end who had a career game against us last year, JT, I want to make sure I say this right, Tui Malo. I tried my best. JT, all due respect there. I did work on it. A ton of respect for you and how you played. And obviously, again, he had a career game against us last year. And then cornerback number 10, Denzel Burke. So those are the guys that kind of stand out to us. And then special teams, Parker Fleming with Xavier Johnson as the kickoff return guy and Jaden Fielding as their kicker. So tremendous challenge, also tremendous opportunity, and we're looking forward to going to Columbus and play this game. Open up to questions.
Let's go to Rich Garcella and then Donnie Collins. You're on deck.
Good afternoon, James. How are you?
Good, Rich. How are you?
I'm well, thanks.
How do you always get to go first? Is there some deal you have with Kincaid, or are you the first one on the call? It's old.
I'm an old man.
Got it.
You said Marvin Harrison is a tremendous player. You've coached wide receivers. What makes him such a tremendous player?
Well, I think number one, the thing that jumps out to me is his body control and ball skills. He's got the ability to contort his body into positions and catch the ball effortlessly. I think that's the first thing. The other thing, he's just so smooth and fluid. Guy that you guys are familiar with, and I think was smooth and fluid, similar to him, is Jahan. The difference is this guy's doing it at 6'3", 6'4". It's interesting. You watch him on tape, and he looks like he's got good size, but when you see him in person, he's a big dude. And I think it's his consistency. He just is consistently, made plays. Obviously, he makes the spectacular plays, but he makes the routine plays as well. So. He's obviously somebody that we got to be aware of at all times, and we got a ton of respect for him and how they use him.
Let's go to Donnie Collins and then Johnny McGonigal. You're on deck.
How are you doing, James?
Good. How are you?
Not too bad. Drew going home, kind of in a way, for this game, back to Ohio. Do you have to have any kind of conversations about him with him? First big game going. First really big game on the road, going back home. or is he one of those guys that you don't worry too much about mentality-wise with that?
Well, I wasn't going to talk to him, but this is my third interview today, and everybody obviously is talking to him like that, so I am going to talk to him. We don't really do things like that, but I am going to have a conversation with him. I can't control the things that are outside of our building. But yeah, I want Drew to do the same thing he's done all year long. I want him to prepare the same way. I want him to practice the same way. You know, I don't think he's a big social media guy, so tune all that stuff out and get better this week through his preparation and his performance, which is really no different than any other week.
Let's go to Johnny McGonigal and then Ben Jones. You're on deck.
James, how you doing?
Good, how are you?
Good. Ohio State quarterback Kyle McCord, the guy that you guys recruited at St. Joe's Prep. What have you seen from him on film so far this season?
Yeah, you know, obviously a big arm. You know, he's a good-sized guy. He's been in their system for a while, so he understands their system. He's surrounded with a ton of talent, wide receivers, tight ends. I think I told you guys I love their tight end. He's been extremely productive. And then obviously they got running backs. So, you know, they do a really good job of, I think they're approaching it a little bit like we've approached it with Drew with the first year starting quarterback. You know, and he's doing what he needs to do for them to be successful offensively and win games. You know, if you look at his touchdown to interception ratio, really good, really good. So I'm not surprised. Obviously, his high school coach is on our staff. You know, we recruited him. We know a lot about him. We had a ton of respect for him out of high school and continue to. You know, and think he's going to be, you know, a challenge for us on Saturday as well.
Let's go to Ben Jones and then Mark Wogenrich. You're on deck.
Hey James, how's it going?
Hey, Ben.
I go away for 1 week and you guys get into all sorts of drama and things. I need to stay around longer, but
I'm avoiding it and keeping my answers as short and as measured as possible.
all right. Well, I was going to ask you about scheduling and long calls, but in any case,
Too soon.
you are a guy that does things intentionally, and obviously we've talked about explosive plays ad nauseum at this point. But even without them, even without maybe some of the personnel things that you want health-wise, getting Trey back is obviously healthy. That how you've approached offense this year has been so intentional, and I would say different to a certain extent than how you've done it the last 9 years. That you didn't need to reinvent the wheel to beat the teams that you've beaten, but there's something to be said for how do you approach the Big Two if you get to those games and they mean what they mean. How do you balance what has worked for you against those teams and not reinventing the wheel, but going, let's know that we want to play this way going into that game and getting good at it?
Yeah. I think what you have to be careful of is you have to understand and figure out what the identity of your team is and embrace that identity no matter what the outside world is saying. You have to be comfortable in your own skin and own who you are and how you have to play. That doesn't mean that you're not looking to improve in certain areas, but I think the Iowa game is a really good example. We went in at halftime and said, look, let's not change who we are. And those runs in the first half that were going for 3 to 4 yards started to go for 8 to 10 yards. So I think for me, staying true to our identity and what has gotten us here, while still saying, okay, these are some areas where we have to improve. Whether that's on offense, whether that's on defense, whether that's on special teams. Again, I think I've said this to you guys before, studying the analytics are important. so you're aware of what those things say. But a lot of times those analytics and those trends are there for a reason, and it means you're good at something. And I think one of the big mistakes that you can make is get to certain games that some people say are this or that, and you try to be something that you haven't been in the previous 6 weeks.
Let's go to Mark Wogenrich and then Frank Bodani. You're on deck.
Hi, James.
Hey, buddy. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good.
You mentioned before that you had no recruiting drama with Drew and his family after he committed. Why was that? Like, how were you able to avoid that?
So a couple things. I think first of all, I think it's how we do things. And I guess what I'm saying by that is we never pressure a kid to commit. Never have. You know, I don't believe in that. Actually, when kids call to commit to us, we usually try to talk them out of it. Because I would rather you not commit than commit and change your mind down the road. That's why when it happens, it bothers me. Because we were as thorough as we could be with the kid, with the parents, with the high school coach, with the trainers, with everybody. Is everybody on the same page? Or let's not do that. Commitment for us and for them is a strong word. So they were very upfront and transparent about that on the front end. But I think the other thing is we typically recruit kids and families that come from, you know, similar background where that's important to them as well. And, you know, for Drew, I think part of it was, you know, I think a lot of people forget, he was not this like high profile guy in the beginning. Even when we, you know, when we offered him and started recruiting him, like, we thought he was really good and had a ton of potential, but he wasn't really viewed that way on a national scale yet. He kind of earned it like old school, blue collar, Penn State way, where he just kind of kept getting better. And then went from a 3-star to a 4-star, and then from a 4-star to, you know, arguably, depending on which service you follow, you know, the #1 recruit in the country. And then some of those people that maybe hadn't offered him before started to offer him. But again, because of, I think, Drew and how he's wired, and mom and dad, and how they're wired and how they raised them, and then how thorough we were and how thorough they were, it didn't change. I remember them even calling us, saying, "Hey, we just want you to know this coach called us. And like, we don't know how to like do it because we don't want to be rude, but we don't really want to talk to them. And I don't want you to hear that we're talking to these people because we're not." But like, they were just super transparent. And we did the same thing. I think if I remember correctly, it was during COVID. So it wasn't even like this sexy recruiting process. Like, I think they came up and drove around campus by themselves with no tour or nothing. So I think it's just a combination of how we do things. Like, we don't offer playing time. We don't do a lot of things that I don't think are realistic in the recruiting process. We try to treat people, and I try to treat people the way I would want if my son was being recruited, how that would go. And I think some people are really drawn to that, and some people aren't. So we're not for everybody, you know. We're not going to just tell you everything you want to hear. And to be honest with you, I don't want the same in return. What do you like? What don't you like? Let's talk through this. So for the most part, we don't have a whole lot of drama, and that was the same with Drew and his family.
We'll go to Frank Bodani and then Corey Geiger.
Hey, good afternoon, James.
Hey, Frank.
Drew, has he, especially in the last few weeks, has he improved in anything particular that maybe people might miss from the outside, just looking at the games? Anything specific that you can point to?
Yeah, I think, you know, I was just about to answer this, and like, I don't want it to come off the wrong way. Again, I'm being measured because I don't want this to sound like I'm being a smart aleck. But like, that's probably why I got so like uncomfortable last week. Is you spend your whole career trying to get quarterbacks to take checkdowns. Like every quarterback wants to throw the corner route or the go route or the post. I mean, who's throwing checkdowns in their backyard? Right? So that's why I got so uncomfortable and upset last week, because like it was just so foreign. So here we got a young kid who's starting for the first time. And we can call those plays and he'll take the check down. And to me, he's doing a really good job of keeping the main thing, which is protecting the football, trying to create explosive plays when they're there, but not forcing them, managing the game. And when you say manage the game, sometimes people look at that like as not a compliment. Like the quarterback on every play, whether it's a run game, whether it's RPO, whether it's traditional pass, there's a lot on that guy's plate to make sure that we're not running dead plays. So he's being graded mentally as well as physically on every single play. And he's done a really good job. He's getting more and more comfortable with that every single week. I think he's refining his process of how he watches film, how he studies the game plan. So I'm very pleased with him, and I want Drew to understand this, and I want our team to understand this. And that's what I addressed with them on Sunday. That's what we have to do this week. If our process is what we say our process is, we just have to take the next step this week and get better again this week. Not do anything more than that. Drew doesn't need to be anything more than what he's been the previous weeks. He just needs to continue to refine his process. So I think he's just been steady. And to me, when you're steady and you're making small gains daily with your mental approach and your emotional approach and your physical approach to the game, you get better and you'll like where you'll be at the end of the season. And that's what he's doing, and not listening to all the other stuff. So I hope I answered your question. It's hard because my nature is not to be measured, but then I come in here wanting to be measured because of all the other stuff.
It's good. Last question from Zoom, Corey Geiger.
Hi, James.
Hey, Corey.
I want to ask you about something that also came up a lot in 2016. This team has been sensational in the second half of games all season. The first half, you've had some slower starts. What do you attribute that to this year? And do you have more focus on being sharper earlier in games?
I think I had the same answer in 2016, but with a different commissioner. Commissioner Petiti came and saw me before the season. He said, look, I want drama, so wait till the second half, get everybody watching the game to make it exciting. I think it's a similar answer with a different commissioner I gave in 2016. I think sometimes when you have a young team, you got to be able to make adjustments in between series, but sometimes it takes getting in the locker room and settling them down and saying this is what's going on. But the reality is, we got to find ways to do it faster. We got to be able to start out fast in practices and in games and play at a high level. But again, I think at the end of the day, I do think we're playing really good complementary football. And that's a term that's thrown around a lot. But I think we're probably more complementary and more balanced than we've been in the past. And I think the players and the coaches have done a good job of embracing that. One of the things I've talked to the coordinators, they get up on Sunday and I talk to the team, and then offense, defense, special team coordinators get up and they kind of summarize the game as well. And we do that as a team. Some places don't. You go into your separate rooms. But I think it's always important for our defensive players to hear what Mike is telling our offense because they're learning football. And I think it's good for our offense to hear from Manny because they're learning football. And obviously, as you can imagine, what the offense is teaching in 2 minutes, usually the defense is teaching the opposite, but maybe a different way of looking at it. So, one of the things that I think has been really good is a lot of times we'll talk about an offensive stat, but it's really not an offensive stat, it's a team stat. And the offense, I think we may be leading the conference in points or something right now. Is that right? Well, that's not an offensive stat. Our defense is putting our offense in a position to have short fields. That's a team stat. Just like I talked about on defense and red zone opportunities against our defense. That's a defensive stat, but really the way we're playing, it's truly a team stat. And I think one of the things that's been really good is Manny to get up and address the defense, but talk to the offense about what the offense is doing to put the defense in the best position to be successful. And Mike doing that with the offense and then to the defense. I think that's been really good, and then Stacy as well. I don't remember what your original question is, but I hope I answered it at this point. Did I? Yeah.
Please raise your hand and we'll take a mic to you. We'll start with Mark.
Hey James, thanks for your time today.
You as well.
What was it that you saw in Drew, you and your staff, before everybody else did? You had mentioned that it took a while for him to kind of go up in the ratings. And was there somebody who was kind of pounding the table for him initially in the recruiting process?
Yeah, I think, Mike got here, and obviously I think at that point we already had Bo committed, if I remember correctly.
Thank you, sir.
And Mike really liked Bo. But we felt like we needed to get 2 quarterbacks in that class, and that's another thing we're pretty upfront about, with people. Obviously, not only is he scouring the country at Penn State, but he had already done that, obviously at his previous institution. And then I think, let's be honest, on top of it, he's from Ohio. And if you're from Ohio and you got buddies and friends calling you about guys, it's more natural to kind of find out about guys and be aware of guys that are from your area just because of the connections and the network you have. So I think that kind of got it started, and we liked his film. His transformation, he's got a quarterback coach, Brad Bendler. I've never seen a transformation like it. And to be honest with you, I didn't even really believe in it. I've always been a believer that you can really improve quarterbacks 90% of the time through their footwork and their timing and their anticipation and their pre-snap understanding of defense. That's when the game starts to slow down. That's where you really can help quarterbacks, especially at the college level, because we just don't get that much time to just do straight indie with guys. But Brad's ability with Drew's commitment and work ethic, his transformation is crazy. And that just continued. He just kept getting better. His high school ran a wide open spread offense, which I think also helped him kind of get a really good feeling of depth and space. And how to make people defend 53 1/3, and he's got the arm to do that. Sometimes you got quarterbacks that are sequential thinkers, and sometimes they're spatial thinkers, almost like a point guard. And the good ones can do both, and he's got the ability to do both. But I think it's like most things, right? It's not one thing. It's Drew's work ethic and drive to be good. He's got some obviously physical gifts in terms of his body type and his arm strength. And then he's been surrounded with really good coaches. His high school coach at Medina High School, as well as the trainer, Brad Bendler, who I already mentioned. But then also coming to a place like Penn State, that's going to run a system that is pro style, and it's got some spread elements, but we have enough flexibility within the system to take advantage of the things that we think he can do well. So I think it's a combination of things. And again, I think like always, it goes back to how you were raised at home. I think mom and dad have done a really good job with him. It's just a very steady level. You know, we talk about humble and hungry, and I think he's that.
In the middle, Mike.
Hey, Mike.
Good afternoon, James. How are you?
Good, man. How are you?
Good. You haven't been in a lot of close games where the game's really on the line in the fourth quarter for a long time. I don't know it's a good problem to have. I don't know what you could do about it, but is it a concern that your guys maybe have not had a ton of reps, a couple minutes left, and it's all on the line?
Well, again, I think you control the things that you can control. And I think we've had some situations where maybe we went into halftime and you know, the game was closer than maybe people thought it would be, and you know, maybe there was some sense of that. But you control the things that you can control, and I think we've played the way we needed to play to get better. But yeah, I think obviously you got to be able to win big games in the fourth quarter. You got to be able to win one possession games. We practice those things and practice a lot with 2-minute drills and things like that. But yeah, there's some things that are just going to have to organically happen. But we expect this to be one of those types of games. You know, we've played these guys for a long time, probably up to the last 2 years. We've probably played these guys as well as anybody in the conference. But we got to find a way to be able to win in the fourth quarter and win these one possession games.
Back left, Andrew.
Hey, Coach, that was a great precursor to my question. I know you guys aren't spending much time talking about last year's game. It definitely was the one that kind of got away from you guys. How much of an influence was that the offseason, maybe the bye week, as something that you guys talked about, how that game ended? And for Manning specifically, that was the first time we really faced Ohio State. How much does he use in that game specifically as a learning tool?
Yeah, I think all of us, right, we're a combination of our previous experiences. And whether you're a first-time coordinator in this league or a first-time player in this league, I think all those experiences, both positive or adversity, I think if you approach them the right way, they help you grow. But we got a ton of respect for Ohio State and their history, you know, and not just now. Like literally from a historical perspective, is interesting. Kind of looking at you know, what Penn State's records were against all these teams before we even got here. Those things are important to study and understand. But I think last year's experience was a learning tool for our entire team, for all of our coordinators and all of our coaches. And I think it probably goes back to the previous question. I think we played really well for 3 quarters and didn't finish. I think that's a combination of a lot of things. But yeah, there are opportunities to grow and get better as long as you approach it that way.
Up front, Neil.
Hey, James.
And yeah.
I think they owe you some games from the 50s and the 60s. They were all out there for some reason.
Say this again?
They owe you some games from the 50s and 60s. They were all out there. Penn State played Ohio State out there.
Why?
I don't know. I guess they...
You were there.
You're saying they were all away games?
They
or
were
the
out
majority
there
were
in
away
the
games?
50s and the 60s. The games were at Ohio State.
Not here.
Right.
So this isn't just like a
Yeah,
new
they owe you
phenomenon.
they owe you some games. Anyway, can you expound a little bit on your comment? You called it a tremendous opportunity. Do you see this as a measuring stick and a hurdle to clear to get where you guys want to go?
Yeah, as you know, you know me very well, and you're gonna ask these questions, I get it. We're trying to find a way to get a win this week, against a really good team, against a program we got tremendous respect for, coaching staff, we got a ton of respect for the talent that they have. But we approach it the same every single week. Everybody on the outside is talking. We're approaching it the way we do every single week. This is a really important game. Why? Because of how we've handled the previous 6. If we didn't handle the previous 6 the right way, you wouldn't be asking that question. So each week is really important. That's how we approach it.
Bob. Hey, James.
Hey, Bob.
As you guys continue to kind of hunt for explosive plays in the running game, 20 or more yards, how would you assess how
Explosive plays 12 yards or more.
Okay, but okay, so okay,
Just so,
12 more.
and I'm not trying to, again, I want to make sure I'm clear.
sure.
So the way we do explosive plays is 12 yards or more in the run game and 15 yards or more in the pass game. And the reason we do it that way, that's what most of the analytics people do. So we're consistent. So now when we say, okay, where are we at? Our numbers reflect the same of what the most of the national analytics people do.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
How would you assess how Kaytron and Nick have done in situations where you've created an opportunity where there's just one guy in the hole, and they either make them miss or maybe run through them to turn maybe a 4 or 5 yard gain into a gain of 12 or more yards?
Yeah, so good question. A couple things. I think, again, like real football people, like you guys, like our staff, like college coaches that are evaluating us, NFL scouts, I think those guys are running really well and really hard and really physical. To your point, is there times where we're in the open field and we go run the safety over? Yeah. But again, I also think that goes back to the question earlier about, I think it may have been Ben, about, identity. You got to embrace who you are. Like as a player, as a coach, as a leader, as a team, you got to embrace who you are. This is who we are right now, and we're doing it well. I also know when the opportunities present themselves, there is evidence that these guys will make the big plays because there's enough evidence that they will. I still believe what I've said before. I think people are still playing us different. I think they're playing us a little bit different than they did last year based on the safeties and the number of people in the box and how they're fitting the runs, saying that you got 2 proven commodities. We're going to make these 2 guys beat us, or not allow these 2 guys to beat us. But again, when we watch the tape on Sundays, we've been very pleased with how they're playing and how they're running. Is there some times where they're one-on-one with the safety and they try to go destroy the safety? Yeah. And would you like them sometimes to make a miss? But I would also say there's examples of them last year doing the same thing. When they lowered the shoulder, they punished the guy, bounced off it, and went 60. So I just think those things they're going to come. They're going to come, and they're going to happen organically as long as we allow them to come and don't create something that hasn't been detrimental to us to this point.
In the middle, John?
Hey James, how are you?
Good, John. How are you?
Doing good. You mentioned that Ohio State's using more 3 safety looks this year.
What's your hat?
It is a Roback hat.
Oh, gotcha.
You mentioned Ohio State using more 3 safety looks this year. What kind of unique challenges does that present for you guys, given how much you use 12 personnel?
Yes, I think it's the same reason why people do it, right? When you're playing, say, a traditional 4-3 or a traditional 3-4, you got rules of how you account for the guys in the box and how you're going to block to the Sam, how you're going to combo block to the Mike, how you're going to combo block to the Will, or you're reading the Will and the RPO. Now when they got this extra safety, like Ohio State's doing, like Iowa State kind of was the team that kind of, you know, make it kind of sexy and popular out there. It's different than your normal rules of how you account for that guy in the run game, how you account for that guy in the pass game, either as a blitzer or as a robber in coverage. No different than in some ways why it's difficult to defend the wishbone when you don't see it all year long, or the Delaware wing tee when you don't see it all long, or now, in some ways, you know, a traditional two-back power set. So that's where it can become challenging, is you're having to teach things different than you normally do, which with coaches, right, just like teachers, you're trying to, as much as you can, teach like same as, or like, okay, this is like this. This is the same as this. You're putting it into this category. This is how we're going to treat this. And this defense kind of forces you out of that a little bit. And it's got to be more specific to this defense and how they play. So you just don't have the accumulated reps against this type of defense.
Two more questions, Daniel.
Unless you're Iowa State's offense, who faces it every single day in practice.
Two more questions, Daniel and then Audrey.
Good afternoon, James. How are you?
Good, how are you?
Doing well. You've talked a lot about Drew's poise this year, and you've pointed back to the Purdue game last year is when it really stood out to you. Was that something that you could see during the recruiting process, that he was this type of quarterback with that type of poise as a high schooler, or did you have to see him kind of in the fire before you actually knew it?
Yeah, I think, you know, as you can imagine, most of the guys that we recruit, you know, they should be dominating high school football, right? I mean, they should be. They're typically bigger, stronger, and faster, but that's also what makes it difficult sometimes when you're just so much physically bigger, stronger, and faster than everybody you're playing against. How will you handle it when you're on a field where you're not just physically bigger, stronger, and faster than everybody? And then specifically with quarterbacks, that's always hard to determine before games, because with a lot of the other positions, you're getting to see those guys in practice in live situations as well. And at quarterback, you don't get a whole lot of those opportunities, unless you're going to make your guys live in practice, which most people are not going to do. So they may look a certain way, but then when they get hit from the blind side 3 times, how are they on the 4th time? Like, did they start peeking? Did they start leaving the pocket before they should? You know, so on and so forth. So at the quarterback position, a lot of times it takes truly till they're in a college game to see whether they have that or not. And then sometimes we've had examples of guys that maybe they weren't ready for that as a redshirt freshman, but then they are. You know, we got a young man who's no longer with us, is playing at another school, who's playing really well right now, that played for us as I think a redshirt freshman, and in that moment of that game, he might not have been ready for it at that time. So sometimes you need to be in a game to figure it out at the quarterback position. But then sometimes it's just normal maturation process that has to happen, and everybody's different there. Some guys can be a really good player as a freshman by their 5th game. Some guys, it takes until they're a senior. They may end up being the same type of player. You know, I think Keaton Ellis has had an unbelievable career here. I think he's got a chance to play at the next level. Joey Porter redshirted as a true freshman. Keaton played as a true freshman. Everybody's journey and path is different. Now, Keaton may end up at the same spot in the NFL. Joey's career started out different. There's a lot of different things that kind of go into that, and that's to me a little bit of the sad part about the transfer portal, is sometimes the guys don't get to figure that out. You know, sometimes the guys come to us and they start doing really well, and everybody's like, oh, he needed to change his scenery. Well, maybe he's just a year older, you know? So there's a lot of things that kind of go into it, but to me, specific to your question in the quarterback position, a lot of times it takes the games. You know, I'll give you another example, because a couple of you guys asked me this question. Trust me, I was asking myself the same question. Daquan Hardy. Well, how many times do you really see a punt returner return punts live? You may do punt return in practice. Say you do it, I don't know, 50 times. How many times you're actually going live where you want the bullets running full speed down on that guy and taking those type of hits? I know Terry Smith don't want that. You know, Manny Diaz don't want that. So that's the fine line for us as coaches, the way the game has changed and the amount of hitting you do. You know, some of this evaluation process at most positions you can really see in game. You can see in practices or scrimmages because of the way you practice, but some things not. So I hope that answers your question.
Last question, Audrey.
Hey, James.
I just reminded myself, I said I was going to be measured coming into this press conference. I'm not being measured, but I'm going to be for you.
I feel like you might need to be. How do you feel like Venga graded out Saturday, and do you expect
Good.
that JB will be back? Is it still the same on JB, that you expect to have him back at some point this year?
I expect JB back.
And Venga?
I expect Venga to play.
No assessment on how he did against UMass?
Yeah, I think Venga's playing really well. I'm very pleased with Venga. We view Venga like we view Shelton. We view those guys as starters. And if you look at him, he's been either playing starters reps or starting games anyway. So yeah, he's playing really well, will continue to play for us, and we do expect to get JB back.
Thank you very much, Coach.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.